A single sentence can shake the very foundations of logic. Imagine a simple statement. This sentence is false. At first glance, it feels harmless, almost playful. Yet beneath its surface lies a riddle so profound that it has confounded philosophers for over 2,000 years. The liar paradox challenges the basic principles of truth and falsehood, forcing the mind into a never-ending loop of contradiction. If the sentence is true, then it must be false, but if it is false, then it must be true. Caught between these two possibilities, certainty evaporates, and the very concept of truth appears to unravel. This paradox is not just a clever word trick. It reveals the deep and sometimes unsettling limits of language and logic, drawing a line between what can be said and what can truly be known. It pulls at the seams of human understanding, showing how easily the rules we trust can collapse under their own weight. For anyone who values clear thought and coherent reasoning, encountering the liar paradox is like staring into a mirror that reflects an endless maze. In a world that often demands certainty, encountering such a paradox is a reminder of how intricate and mysterious even the simplest ideas can be. The journey into the world of paradoxes offers a deeper appreciation for the complexity of thought itself. Those who find these mysteries intriguing often help fuel the growth of projects like this one, where curiosity is both the guide and the goal. The liar paradox is a self-referential statement that creates a logical dilemma by declaring its own falsehood. At its core, it presents a simple sentence that says, "This sentence is false." If the sentence is true, then what it says must hold, meaning it must be false. However, if it is false, then it must actually be true. This circular reasoning traps the mind in a paradox where no consistent truth value can be assigned. The roots of the liar paradox can be traced back to ancient Greece. It is most famously attributed to a Cretan philosopher named Epimenides, who lived around the 6th century BCE. According to historical accounts, Epimenides is said to have proclaimed that all Cretans are liars, introducing a version of the paradox that linked truthfulness to a broader cultural statement. Over time, this evolved into the sharper and more abstract form, a single sentence referring to its own falsity. Philosophers of antiquity, such as Aristotle, were aware of similar paradoxes, although they did not explore them in exhaustive detail. Aristotle briefly mentioned problems related to self-reference and contradiction in his works on logic. Later, during the medieval period, scholars like Thomas Aquinas and medieval logicians delved deeper into the structure of such paradoxes, recognizing their potential to undermine traditional logical frameworks. The liar paradox also gained renewed attention in the early 20th century during the development of formal logic and mathematics. Thinkers like Bertrand Russell and Alfred Tarski recognized its significance while working on the foundations of language, mathematics, and logic. Tarski, in particular, made substantial efforts to clarify the conditions under which statements about truth could be safely made, attempting to avoid the traps set by self-referential expressions like the liar paradox. Throughout history, the liar paradox has served as a powerful example of the challenges involved in defining truth. It continues to occupy a curious space between philosophy, logic, and even linguistics, standing as a testament to the enduring complexity hidden in even the simplest of statements. At the heart of the liar paradox lies a simple but devastatingly effective structure. A sentence makes a claim about itself, declaring its own falsehood. This self-reference creates a closed loop, where the truth of the sentence depends entirely on its own content. If the sentence, "this sentence is false," is assumed to be true, then what it asserts must be the case. It must be false. But if it is false, then it is not the case that the sentence is false, which implies that it must be true. The result is an endless oscillation between truth and falsehood with no stable resolution. This is not just a trick of words. The paradox exposes a critical fault line in how language and logic handle self-referential statements. In ordinary reasoning, statements are usually about external facts or other subjects. However, when a statement refers to itself, it steps outside the normal flow of communication and becomes entangled in a feedback loop that standard logic cannot easily process. To see the problem more clearly, consider the idea of assigning truth values. In classical logic, every statement is either true or false, but the liar paradox defies this basic principle. If it is assigned the value true, its content demands that it be false. If it is assigned false, its content demands that it be true. Thus, the liar paradox cannot be consistently placed in either category without contradiction. Some thought experiments attempt to escape the paradox by suggesting that such sentences are neither true nor false, existing instead in a kind of undefined or indeterminate state. Others propose that languages must be structured in layers, with statements about truth being made only from a higher level than the statements themselves, thereby preventing direct self-reference. Despite these strategies, the pure form of the paradox remains both simple and stubborn. It demonstrates how fragile our systems of reasoning can be when they encounter their own reflections. What begins as an innocent-sounding sentence becomes a deep and troubling puzzle, one that has challenged thinkers for centuries. The liar paradox has left a lasting mark across philosophy, logic, mathematics, and even computer science. Its implications stretch far beyond a curious riddle, challenging fundamental assumptions about truth, language, and reasoning itself. Philosophers recognized early on that the paradox is not just a play on words, but a real obstacle to creating consistent systems of thought. It forces a reconsideration of how language operates when it tries to speak about itself. In philosophy, the paradox deeply influenced theories of truth. Alfred Tarski, in the 20th century, famously worked to solve the problems it posed by developing a hierarchy of languages. In his approach, statements about truth must be made in a higher level language, never within the same language where the statements themselves exist. This prevented self-referential traps, but also exposed the complexity required to manage something as seemingly simple as declaring a sentence true or false. In mathematical logic, the liar paradox hinted at even deeper troubles. Bertrand Russell's work on set theory and the eventual development of Gödel's incompleteness theorems both carry the imprint of lessons learned from confronting paradoxes like this one. Gödel showed that any sufficiently powerful logical system contains true statements that cannot be proven within the system itself, a profound realization that echoes the endless loop of the liar sentence. The liar paradox also finds echoes in modern computer science, particularly in programming languages and artificial intelligence. Systems that allow for unrestricted self-reference risk collapsing into contradictions, making it necessary to build strict rules to prevent such failures. From designing databases to crafting lessons drawn from the paradox continue to guide how self-referential structures are handled today. Even now, the liar paradox retains its relevance. New philosophical approaches, such as non-classical logics, continue to wrestle with its implications. It stands as a permanent challenge, an intellectual thorn, reminding thinkers across disciplines that some questions may resist final, satisfying answers. The liar paradox stands as a timeless reminder of the fragile boundaries between language, logic, and meaning. What appears at first to be a playful twist of words reveals a profound and unsettling truth about how difficult it can be to capture reality within clear rules. Throughout centuries of thought, no solution has fully erased its power to disturb or intrigue. Instead, it has woven itself into the history of philosophy and logic, challenging every generation to confront the limits of certainty. While strategies and theories have been developed to contain or sidestep its effects, the paradox remains alive at the edges of human understanding. It reminds thinkers, scientists, and everyday individuals alike that even the simplest ideas can harbor depths of complexity waiting to unfold. In a world that often demands straightforward answers, the liar paradox dares to leave a question forever open. Can something be true and false at the same time? Or is the human mind simply brushing against the outer limits of what it can grasp? Thoughts and interpretations are as much a part of this paradox as any formal theory. Those drawn to the mystery are warmly invited to share how they perceive the riddle that refuses to be solved,